So I always wanted to be happy, and I thought that being happy was the goal in life. I want to share a childhood memory with you guys. So as a little boy, and I'm looking at the group I'm speaking with, I think you'll be able to relate to this message. As a boy, Friday nights were the absolute pinnacle of my week. Friday nights at around 6 or 7, the Dukes of Hazzard would come on. Okay? We got some Hazzard fans. So all week long, I'd be anticipating Friday night because I'd spend my allowance, I'd get my 50-cent pop, get my 50-cent bag of chips, which consumed my entire allowance. My mom's here. How come I didn't get more than $1? So I'd consume my whole allowance on my pop and chip, and I'd set it out on the coffee table, and it was ready. Like, I couldn't cork that pop until I heard the theme song of the Dukes of Hazzard come on. But then when that came on, it was game on. I was on my chips and pop, and before Luke and Bo could get in a car chase with Roscoe Pico Train, I'd probably had most of my chips and pops gone. But in that moment, I was happy. I remember being intensely happy in that moment. Now, the little Nedling that was so enthralled with the Dukes of Hazzard, what that little guy didn't know was that in those moments, while I was watching that, I was actually at peace. And I didn't know that. I thought I was just happy. So I think peace is something that we fall into many, many, many times in our life. But when the Dukes of Hazzard was over, I was no longer as happy, or I felt like I was no longer at peace. So what were the qualities that I was leaning into if I really was at peace? And I believe that I was. I believe that I was at total peace when I was watching, Boss Hogg Boss Hogg getting his kermuffins and not being able to capture Luke and Bo and all the shenanigans that would take place. So in those moments when I was watching that show, I was at peace because I was present. There was a great sense of me that disappeared in that moment. That moment that the Dukes of Hazzard theme song came on, I disappeared. I left the room. There was no sense of me. I didn't worry about if I was overweight. I didn't have any sense of what was going to come tomorrow. I wasn't worried about what anybody said to me at school that day. Now, I know little Ned didn't have the problems that, the adult version may have, but I think the same thing applies to us entering into peace in our lives. And I think there was so much that we can just absorb out of just that little bit. How being present, really being present with your life. Life is happening from one moment to the next, and we can't experience it outside of this moment. We think we can in the mind, but we're not. We're actually just leaving this moment to move into a different space in ourselves. So this is a tool that we have to spring into a place of peace. Another aspect of what was happening is I was desireless. And again, this is something that when we move it deeply into our desires, we've moved into our mind and out of the presence of this moment. So that itself is a clue. To be at peace is to start removing some of the desires. Now, desire is a sneaky thing. We could be, having the time of our life, and the mind will interrupt that moment, and it'll say, well, this would be better if this were to happen. And the product of desire is it lures us deeper and deeper into the mind and out of the presence of this moment. So that's another key to moving into having more and more peaceful moments. But when I think about life, I don't think life is just about being happy. I don't think life is about just being at peace. I think life has a whole array of opportunities and experiences for us to go into. I think there's times in life when we need to be sad. We need to be angry or frustrated. But the difference is that no matter what comes up in our experience, we haven't lost our peace. And I think that's a fundamental thing to understand. When I was with the Ashaya monks, we'd go on these long meditation retreats. And I'd come home, and I was the poster child for peace. I was so dialed in. They could have, if you looked up peace on Wikipedia, there'd be a picture of me meditating. And then the first time I got frustrated or angry, and I'm like, I lost it. It's gone. I'm no longer at peace. I was at peace, but it's gone. But I don't think that's natural in life. And I have a lot of friends who are into spirituality like myself, and they think to be spiritual is just to be happy and joyous all the time. And it's kind of funny because leading up to this talk about joy and peace, I had some experiences where I completely fell out of any joy and peace. A friend of mine, her son had committed suicide, and I talk to people. I have a site called You Matter. So I speak to people all the time about big topics like suicide and loss, and I've done lots of community work with palliative care and assisting people into the afterlife. But this one, at this particular time, it got to me. And all week long, I remember I felt out of sorts. I felt angry. I felt frustrated. But I think that it was necessary. It was helping me, reconcile something in myself. It was helping me experience, all of that, but then being able to lean into that silence and to automatically bring up that presence of peace. I didn't have to, all week long while I felt frustrated and angry and sad, when I was having all those experiences, it actually didn't remove me from my peace, because I was able to just continuously lean back and allow that in my life. And I think that's an important point, that we have to understand that life is going to present all these obstacles, and we're going to go through a gamut of different emotions, but it doesn't mean that we've completely lost peace. I think it's important for me, it's been important to constantly move my mind so that I'm positioned and looking for peace constantly. And by doing so, peace becomes a map. Peace, if we're positioning ourselves that I want peace in my life, because we are seeking that, we're asking for that, God brings that into our life. God may bring, devastation or upset for you to experience, to learn how to not move off of your own peace. God will show you that through all these experiences, that we are rooted in peace. That we have to just constantly say, we look at our lives and say, okay, is this bringing me peace? And that's part of why it becomes a map. Because we start to look at the interactions we're having. Maybe there's old friendships that need to go. And if we're positioned and pointed to seeking peace, we'll start to listen to the messages that come up and say, I don't think this person is right for my life anymore. There's so much distraction and noise, we look outward. But if we're constantly seeking peace, peace comes from within, and it starts to rise up in us. It starts to guide us in our life. And I think that the hardest thing on this path for me has been to move into that place continuously and not listen to the voices in my head. It's so common that we look outside of ourselves. And the world right now, if you look out into the world, it's very much not at peace. There's so much conflict and confusion out there. And I think that all this conflict and confusion is important because it will be a catalyst for people to seek peace. And that's what all these dark times that I went through in my life, they were a catalyst for me to move deeper into my own peace. They gave me a reason to seek and desire that peace. Now, I said this talk was about joy and peace. So what is joy? To me, joy is a reward that my heart gives me from following its wise instructions. When I'm listening to what my heart has to say and I follow that, I'm led into peace, but I'm led into the most purposeful life, and the most joyful moments just naturally arise. I don't think we can call joy to our experience. It's something that naturally arises. And I've had the most joyful experiences by leaning into peace, listening to my heart, and following its wise instructions. And that's been my biggest tool throughout my life, is to constantly listen to the heart. What is the heart telling me right now? Is this experience or desire or the things that I want to do in my life, are they going to bring me peace? And my heart knows. It always knows. It has all the wisdom that I've ever needed. So I challenge everybody here. I think it's so important. Start thinking about peace. Ask for peace to come into your life. And watch for what's showing up in your life. And continuously talk to the silence of your heart and say, is this experience going to bring me more peace? Am I following this beautiful guidance inside of myself today? And just see how life changes. Thank you, everybody. I'm incredibly excited to hear Paul sing. And if you want an experience of peace, just listen to this man sing.
Okay. Thank you.